Zara stood at the observation deck of the Galactic Council Station and watched ships drift through the void like silver fish in an endless ocean, and her soulmate band remained cold against her wrist, as it had for the past 70 cycles. The band was a tradition among her people, the Volari, and every child received one at their coming-of-age ceremony, and the crystal embedded in the metal would pulse with warm light when true soulmates drew near. And Zara had traveled to 47 worlds and met thousands of beings from hundreds of species, and the band had never so much as flickered. She had stopped hoping decades ago. The diplomatic chamber buzzed with activity as delegates from across the galaxy gathered for the annual summit, and Zara adjusted her ceremonial robes and prepared her notes for the trade negotiations, and her assistant Krell, a four-armed Thandorian, hurried over with updated files. "Humans are here," he said with barely concealed excitement, "and they just arrived." Through the jump gate, Zara felt her pulse quicken despite herself, and the humans were the newest species to achieve faster than light travel, and the entire galaxy watched with curiosity as these peculiar bipeds stumbled into the cosmic community, and they were emotional, passionate, and utterly baffling to most established civilizations. She had read the reports, and humans formed pair bonds without any mystical guidance, and they chose their partners through something they called love, and the concept seemed both reckless and strangely brave. The human delegation entered the chamber, and Zara found herself staring. There were 5 of them, and all dressed in matching dark blue uniforms, and the woman leading them had auburn hair pulled into a tight bun and sharp green eyes that scanned the room with military precision, and her name badge read Commander Lisa Hayes. Zara looked away and focused on her datapad and tried to ignore the strange flutter in her chest. The summit proceeded, as these things always did, in speeches about cooperation and trade proposals and carefully worded treaties, and Zara participated in her discussions and negotiated tariff rates and shipping lanes and kept her attention firmly on her work. But she found her gaze drifting to the human delegation. Commander Hayes spoke with confidence, and her words were direct and refreshingly free of the flowery diplomatic language most species preferred. And when the Krillian ambassador tried to impose unfair terms on a mining agreement, she stood her ground and argued with facts and passion, and Zara felt something warm bloom in her chest. Focus, she told herself sternly, and looked down at her notes. Her soulmate band burned against her wrist. Zara gasped and jerked her arm up, and the crystal blazed with golden light so bright it cast shadows across her desk, and the warmth spread up her arm and into her chest, and settled somewhere near her heart. And after 70 cycles of silence, the band sang around. Her delegates turned to stare, and soulmate bands were not common among all species, but enough knew of the Volari tradition, and whispers rippled through the chamber. Krell leaned close, and his voice was awed, and he asked if it was really happening. Zara could not speak, and she stared at the glowing crystal and then slowly lifted her eyes. Commander Hayes was looking directly at her. The human's expression was confused and curious, and she glanced at the other members of her delegation and then back to Zara, and she stood and crossed the chamber with purposeful strides. "Excuse me," she said, and her voice was lower than Zara expected and warm like honey, and she gestured to the band. "And is everything all right? And that thing is glowing pretty intensely." Zara swallowed hard and tried to find words, and "It is a soulmate band," she managed, "and it responds to the presence of one's destined partner." Hayes blinked, and her green eyes widened slightly, and, "Oh," she said. And then, after a pause, "That's interesting." Interesting, Zara thought, in 70 cycles of waiting, and the band finally activates, and the human thinks it is interesting. "Do you not have such things among your people?" Zara asked. The commander shook her head. "And we have something called marriage," and her lips quirked in a small smile. "But we generally figure out compatibility through dating and talking and spending time together, and no glowing jewelry required." Zara felt heat rise to her face. And the band was not jewelry. It was sacred. And how dare this human dismiss something so profound? But Hayes was still smiling, and there was something in her eyes that made Zara's breath catch. "I did not mean to offend," the commander said softly. "And I am just trying to understand. And so this band is telling you that I am your soulmate?" "Yes," Zara whispered, "and do you believe it?" The question struck Zara silent, and no one had ever asked her that. And the band was truth, and the band was destiny and questioning. It seemed almost heretical. But as she looked into Lisa Hayes' green eyes, she realized she did not know the answer. "I have always believed," she said slowly, "but you are the first to make it." Glow. Hayes nodded thoughtfully and, "Well then," she said, "and maybe we should talk, and I am not saying I believe in destiny, but I do believe in getting to know people." And that was how it began. They met in one of the station's observation lounges after the summit sessions ended, and Zara brought tea from her homeworld, and Hayes brought something called coffee that smelled bitter and rich. They talked. Hayes told her about Earth and about oceans and mountains and cities that reached toward the sky, and about a small town called Cedar Falls, where she grew up and learned to fix engines in her father's garage. Zara told her about Valar and about the crystal forests that sang in the wind, and about her family's estate on the northern continent, and about how she had disappointed them by choosing diplomacy over a proper marriage. "Your family wanted you to marry someone the band chose?" Hayes asked. "Yes," Zara said, but it never chose anyone. Until now. Until now," Zara agreed, and her hearts were beating too fast. Hayes studied her over the rim of her coffee cup, and her gaze was direct and searching. "And what if I had been cruel or selfish or completely wrong for you? And would you still think we were soulmates just because of that band?" The question unsettled Zara, and no one questioned the band. But Hayes was looking at her with such earnest curiosity that she had to answer honestly. "I do not know," she admitted, "and I suppose I would have to choose whether to follow destiny or my own judgment." Hayes smiled. "And I think I would like you either way," she said quietly. Over the following weeks, they continued to meet, and the summit stretched on and negotiations grew complex, and Zara found herself looking forward to evenings with Lisa more than anything else. They walked through the station's gardens and discussed philosophy and argued playfully about whether fate or choice mattered more. And Zara learned that Lisa took her coffee black and loved old mystery novels and had a laugh that made Zara's entire being feel light. Lisa learned that Zara hummed when she was nervous and had a weakness for sweet pastries and believed in the goodness of people even when they disappointed her. The band glowed constantly in Lisa's presence, and Zara grew so accustomed to the warmth that she barely noticed it anymore. One evening they stood at the observation deck and watched a nebula bloom in shades of purple and gold, and Lisa's hand brushed against Zara's. "I have to tell you something," Lisa said, and her voice was unusually serious. "And I am falling for you, and not because of destiny or fate or that band on your wrist, but because you are brilliant and kind and you challenge me to think differently." Zara turned to face her, and her breath caught in her throat. "I do not know if soulmates are real," Lisa continued, "but I know that I want to be with you, and I want to choose you every day, and not because I have to, but because I want to." Zara felt tears prick her eyes, and she reached up and carefully removed the soulmate band from her wrist. Lisa's eyes widened. "And what are you doing?" Zara held the band in her palm and watched the light slowly fade, and for 70 cycles this band defined my search, she said, "and it told me who I was meant to love, but you taught me something more important." "What is that?" Lisa whispered. "That choosing someone is more powerful than destiny." She slipped the band into her pocket and took Lisa's hand in hers, and the warmth she felt had nothing to do with mystical crystals and everything to do with the woman standing before her. Lisa smiled and pulled her close, and when their lips met, Zara understood what the humans meant by love. It was terrifying and exhilarating and completely worth it. They stayed on the station for another month, and when the summit ended, Zara resigned her position with the Valari Diplomatic Corps, and Lisa requested a transfer to the Joint Human-Valari Trade Mission. Zara's family sent messages ranging from confused to outraged, and how could she abandon the band's wisdom? And how could she choose an alien over tradition? But Zara wrote back and explained that she had not abandoned anything, and she had simply chosen to follow her heart instead of her wrist. And for the first time in her life, that choice felt right. Lisa's family sent a message too, and it was from her mother, and it said, "Welcome to the family, and we cannot wait to meet you." 6 months later, they stood together on Earth in a place called Cedar Falls, and Zara wore a simple white dress, and Lisa wore her dress uniform, and they exchanged vows. In front of family and friends from 2 different worlds, Zara kept the soulmate band in a drawer, and sometimes she took it out and held it and remembered the moment it first glowed. But she never wore it again, because she had learned that true partnership was not about destiny recognizing itself, but about two people choosing each other again and again, through all the chaos and beauty of living, and every morning when she woke beside.